Hello everybody, welcome to Writer Wednesdays, episode 24. In this episode, I will be writing for you a poem called Fortune. But before I go any further, I should mention I did get a new type of fountain pen, one of the cartridge units. When I find it around my room, I will use it in a future episode because I think it would be good to eventually do one with a tool that's a little bit better for beginners who want to get started. At least I think it is. If it's the next video or the video after that, or some video later down in the future, I'll have to see for myself if I feel like it's any easier to use, and then add a link to the description for it accordingly on the video I use it, if others want to try it too. In the interim, I'm going to go with my old classic one, the feather. This one's seen many conventions and guest appearances in different places, and I think the wear and tear is pretty evident in that. That being said, I've had it since 2016, so that does say something about its longevity, despite me only casually using it for many of those years. And let's begin. You guys trust me, if you've seen some of my vlogs, you know I can go on and on about nothing for at least 30 minutes, if given the opportunity. Heck, I've even held a panel where, my intended, plan didn't pan out, and then I ultimately just had it be a Q&A panel. Kept people entertained while slightly under the influence of alcohol for an hour and 30 minutes. It was a nighttime panel, so, and it just happened to coincide with the cocktail hour, or not too long before it, or after. Rather after it, I mean. So yeah. Anywho, we take out the page. Take out the ink. And TSA approved bottles, I should mention. Because I just never know when I'm going to be flying with my kit. Matter of fact, I might be headed for Nebraska sometime in the next year or so to visit family. I don't think I'll do like a documentary series like I used to do back on my old YouTube channel with the Californian and Michigan, which honestly was less of a documentary series and more of a, well, these are some interesting antics, but the production value is dubious at best. So that's pretty much the and this around. You can see what my hand does, as is customary for this series now. So do it between the legs. There we go. And I think that's a good spot. I really close this thing tight, but it's because if I don't, I'm liable to have a mishap. Also, shout out to the stationary furs chat I just joined a bit ago. I had no idea that there were actually furries besides maybe me and a couple other people who were into old school writing. I see them with all these different feather pens, and not even just feather pens, but other tools as well. That, like, that's how I got the idea to do the cartridge one. Was I'm like, well, maybe I should try something that's a little bit less temperamental to use than the feather I'd been practicing with all this time, if only to get a feel for the sheer variety of tools out there. With that, the writer commits the first strokes. This is going to be a little bit of a shorter poem, and maybe shorter episode if I don't ramble on too long, relative to what I actually write down. But I figured, it's short, it's sweet, it doesn't end predictably, you know. Because a pattern I've noticed in previous works is, at least for the newer stuff, so many of my poems ended with something along the line of "until we're dead" or "forever" or, you know, something like that. But this isn't one of those at all, as you will see when I get done with it. And actually, let me zoom that in for you if I can. Ooh, yeah. That's a very good zoom. Okay. Am I able to do it more with this camera? Nope. Okay. I guess only in photo mode it lets me do the 10K close-up, but I don't think you'll need it since I can read it through the camera on my end. Let's see. And also, let the sounds of scratching nib on paper soothe you if you want. Or the music I'm undoubtedly gonna add to it post-production. There's actually a term that film students would probably know, which refers to whether or not the character can actually hear the music that the audience does. And interestingly enough, in a game from my childhood called Luigi's Mansion, I mean, I was like, I want to say 10 or maybe not even 10, like 12 or 13 at the time. It came out and it utilized a similar device, whereas there was music that only we could hear, but then we'd have Luigi humming the very same melody. So it really gave it an extra layer of depth and immersion in a way, albeit a seemingly small thing, you know, in retrospect. So in that spirit, I'll just kind of well, nah, I'd kind of break the immersion, because by this point it'd be playing a whole different track if I tried to hum what you'd be hearing. Because as many of you know, I tend to like music that goes you know, something like that. You know, think like your D&D music that gets you in the mood, you know, for roleplay and all that. You totally didn't just see what I did there, but I don't care. Sometimes you get a little overenthusiastic, and then... Nope, that's a do-over. Now, in previous videos I would edit out these kinds of things, but I think this time I'm gonna show you just to emphasize how hard I work at this. Truth be told, I never professed to be an expert at this, I'm just a hobbyist. And maybe people who have had works from me in the past will start to see why this can sometimes take an hour or more to get going if I'm having a bad pen day. Also, I'm going to confess that when I make the name inscriptions, it's probably not in any way accurate to it because A, I don't speak any other language fluently except English, and B, I have to rely either on the alphabet that native speakers would learn in kindergarten or Google Translate, or sometimes a combination of the two. So... it's more for stylistic things that I do such stuff, so if the name actually means something completely vulgar by mistake, you know, go ahead, laugh. I don't... Calligraphy has a slightly different goal than, say, inscription itself, which is... inscription, they want to go for accuracy and poetry like what I'm doing here. But with calligraphy, there's an art to even inaccurate things. But I always put that as a disclaimer in writing on the description, so it's not like I'm trying to claim to be an expert at anything I'm not. It's just some people like even looking at the letters, you know, in a way that could be passable to someone who's not in the loop. But a native speaker would easily call it out and say, yeah, no, that's wrong. But, you know, It is what it is. Despite such flaws, I've somehow brought home a couple hundred at every convention I go to or more. And of that, about half comes from these inscriptions, be it names, phrases, poems. So, I must be doing something right, but I'm not going to pretend to know which part of it is correct and which part I could be doing a lot less of, you know. It's an experiment to me at some level. You know, now that I'm seeing the camera timeline, it looks like this will be about an average episode of Writer Wednesdays, even with a poem this short. Although some have taken an hour before, but on average it's like 30 minutes or so. Although, then again, when I cut out edits, it does end up being about this length. Although I have seen some episodes that when edited properly are like 20 minutes, or even sometimes when not edited. Now, the reason I decided on this particular poem for this week is because I released a sort of family-friendly Monster Mondays video just a couple days ago. I wanted to kind of do something that, you know, you can read to your kids. Not to say the others you couldn't, it's just, you know, some of the others were a little bit darker in theme than this. Like by a lot. Exploring the purpose for which we struggle. Whereas this is more just a this is how things are. But neither takes it to a good or bad direction necessarily. Emphasizing the relativistic amid extremes, the relativism on which we define what it is. And that the previous two lines, to have is never within social norms, and to use words with synonyms is redundance. It kind of illustrates something interesting, the fact that I use to twice within the to begin the line there, in a way that very much paints a picture of what redundancy looks like. So, sometimes whether intentional or not, you can find little things like that. It's kind of like how if you were to put the tails on your Q's and G's when writing out the word squiggle, you basically just made one in writing it. I do kind of a similar thing sometimes with poetry, whether I mean to or not. So it's always interesting to see whether I do it or not, and when, to try to find the pattern to it, you know. And sometimes I'll see like little shapes in how the edges of the poem turn out, like it would look like a bar chart or something in this case. But sometimes it'll make different shapes. Again, a byproduct of me just sort of writing it out, and in a way that's a little less familiar, perhaps. As I'd only started doing this since 2016, whereas I'd had many more years to do it without something like this. Had I the same experience, or the same training in this form of writing as I did in the modern, perhaps I'd be doing way more with it. I'd never have things happen like what you saw earlier. Or if I did, it would be less often, perhaps. Like so rare, like 1 in 100 times. Huh. Yeah. Alrighty, and with that, we get to reading it. Fortune. Associated with wealth can be good or bad. It means luck and good health. Acquisition drives us mad. Got it. Acquisition drives us mad. Wants never end, sometimes called prosperity. Hope of it around the bend. Happiness without a rarity. Fortune takes many forms. Always means abundance. To have is never within social norms. To use words with synonyms is redundance. One needs only to understand. Being fortunate is never by our own hand. Thank you. And feel free to consult the description box below to see more content. Feel free to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. And to support this channel or get this poem for yourself, I only have one, as you can see, of it. Go to www.theforsakenscribe.com, and you might want to put the https:// if you're using a mobile phone, just for the extra security. With that, this has been Writer Wednesday, and I bid you adieu. Bye-bye.